Back then, the average house cost around $15,000. Can you imagine? And that still felt like a mountain. But you could raise a family on one income, mow the lawn on Saturdays, and know your neighbors by name. The white picket fence dream actually came with a front porch and a working doorbell. A gallon of gas cost around 30 cents. And that wasn't on sale. That was normal. You'd pull into the station, and an attendant in a cap would fill it up, check your oil, clean your windshield, and maybe even hand you a free map. No credit cards, no touch screens. Just coins, a nod, and a smile. You saw them everywhere, parked at the diner, idling at red lights, or rumbling through suburbia. The Ford Mustang hit the streets in '64, and suddenly every teenager had a poster of one. It wasn't just a car, it was freedom on four wheels. And if you knew someone who had one, you never forgot it. The average U.S. salary in the 1960s hovered around $7,000 a year. It wasn't much, but it stretched. One income fed the whole house, filled the gas tank, and maybe even paid for a summer vacation. You didn't feel rich, but you didn't feel like you were falling behind either. Summer camp was bug spray, bunk beds, and that one counselor with a guitar who knew 2 chords. You'd write postcards home that said, "Having fun," even if you cried the first night. And somehow, the mosquito bites, the cafeteria mystery meat, and the campfire songs stuck with you forever. The milkman brought fresh glass bottles to your doorstep before you ever worried about expiration dates. You'd hear the clink of bottles before breakfast was even on the table. And if you were lucky, he left chocolate milk too. A little surprise that made your morning feel like Christmas. Watching the moon landing live meant crowding around a tiny black and white TV with fuzzy reception and rabbit ears. Nobody blinked. Neil Armstrong's voice crackled through the static, and for one brief second, the entire country felt like it was sitting in the same living room, holding its breath. The Cuban Missile Crisis wasn't just news, it was a knot in your stomach. People kept radios close and looked at the sky a little longer. Schools practiced duck and cover, and for a few long days in October 1962, the world felt like it was holding its breath. Back then, cameras had flash bulbs you had to replace after every shot. They'd pop, sizzle, and get hot. And you carried a little pack of extras like they were ammo. Family gatherings meant blinding everyone 5 times in a row, just to be sure one picture turned out. When the Beatles showed up on the Ed Sullivan Show, it was like a switch flipped. The hair, the screaming, the way girls clutched their chests like they'd seen the future, and maybe they had. For one night, every living room in America became a concert hall with a tiny black and white stage. Seatbelts? We didn't know her. The back of the station wagon was a rolling playground. Blankets, toys, maybe a loose dog or two. No one wore a belt, and somehow we survived. We bounced with every bump in the road, eating snacks and fighting over who got the window seat. Hanging clothes outside was just what you did. Lines stretched across backyards, and every home had a basket of pins. Sheets flapped in the breeze, towels dried stiff as boards, but they smelled like sunshine, and you didn't need a dryer to feel clean. Lucy wasn't just a rerun, she was family. You knew the episode. You knew the chocolate factory, the grape stomp, the scheming, but you still laughed. Because it wasn't about the plot. It was about comfort, about hearing that same intro jingle and feeling at home. Every kid had at least one Viewmaster reel. You'd click through 3D images of national parks, cartoon characters, or Disney scenes. That little red viewer transported you, click by click, to places you'd only ever heard about. And sometimes you'd flip through the whole thing twice just for fun. When Walter Cronkite came on the TV, the room went quiet. You didn't argue with him. You listened. He wore the same suit every night, looked straight into the camera, and just told you what happened. No yelling, no drama, just facts. And somehow, that was enough. Every neighborhood had a barbershop with the striped red poles spinning outside. Inside, checkerboard floors, leather chairs, and a radio that never changed stations. Men talked politics, baseball, and local gossip while getting a trim. No appointments. Just wait your turn and catch up on the town. 8mm home movies were how you saved birthdays, vacations, and backyard moments. You'd drag out the screen, thread the reel just right, and dim the lights. The film would stutter, go silent, and suddenly everyone was laughing at themselves in grainy, jittery slow motion. Pong hadn't arrived yet, but pinball machines stood tall in arcades, diners, and bowling alleys. You didn't need graphics, just flashing lights, loud bells, and a steady flipper hand. Dropping in 2 nickels felt like unlocking a world where high scores mattered more than report cards. Aluminum ice trays were medieval. You had to lift that cold metal lever with both hands, praying the cubes wouldn't fly across the kitchen. And when they finally popped out, it was loud enough to scare the dog. But somehow, those cubes felt colder than anything from a modern fridge. You wore saddle shoes until they practically talked back at you. You'd scuff them up before class and spend recess rubbing white polish back on. Somehow, they were always just uncomfortable enough to notice, but never bad enough to leave at home. Everybody had a pair, whether they liked them or not. Typing class was an orchestra of chaos. Heavy keys, loud clicks, and fingers stained with ribbon ink. You'd mess up one letter and have to start all over. And if you forgot to hit return at the end of the line, the whole thing went sideways. Polaroids were magic spells. You'd press the button, hear that buzz, and then wait, and wait, and wait. Someone always said, "Shake it," like that helped. When the picture finally appeared, it felt like proof you existed. You stuck it on the fridge or lost it forever in a drawer. You could feed a vending machine a couple coins and actually get something worth eating. A cold soda, a pack of gum, maybe even a sandwich if you were brave. No touchscreen, no card reader, just buttons that barely worked and snacks that somehow always got stuck one row too high. Back then, it really felt like America was going somewhere. There was a sense of motion, space, highways, ideas, hope. It wasn't perfect, but people believed in better, in progress, in possibility. And when you looked around, you actually felt like you were part of it. The ice cream truck didn't just play a jingle, it announced summer. You'd hear that tinny melody from 5 blocks away, scream for change, and sprint barefoot across burning sidewalks. The menu never changed, but the joy never wore off. Bomb pops tasted better when you earned them by running. In school, duck and cover drills were treated like spelling tests. You'd crawl under your desk, cover your neck, and pretend you were safe from nuclear fire. Nobody questioned it. It was just another Tuesday. The scariest part wasn't the drill. It was how normal it felt. Metal lunchboxes were built like tanks. You had your favorite show or comic plastered on the front and a thermos inside that smelled vaguely of milk no matter what was in it. The latch always broke. The handle always cracked. But you carried it every day like it was armor. Before cartoons were called content, we had Howdy Doody, Captain Kangaroo, and Hop-Along Cassidy. The puppets were strange, the sets were simple, and the jokes were older than dirt. But we didn't care. It felt like they were talking directly to you, and that made all the difference. You walked to school, no app, no map, no adult supervision. Just a backpack, a jacket, and instructions to come straight home. Most of us didn't. We took the long way, stopped at the corner store, and made it back by dinner, like nothing ever happened. The record player was sacred. That click, the soft hiss, then the music. Every party, every Saturday, every heartbreak, the soundtrack came from vinyl. You learned which 45 skipped and how to fix them with a coin. Nobody threw on background noise. You listened. Plastic rain bonnets folded into neat little squares and lived at the bottom of every mom's purse. The sky would cloud over, and boom, out came the bonnet like a superhero cape. It wasn't flattering, but it worked, and somehow you never questioned why every woman had one. You didn't just flip channels, you fought the TV. One person held the rabbit ears while the other shouted, "Right there! No! Back! Now let go!" You'd jam tinfoil on top and pray the picture stayed still. When it worked, it felt like you'd won a war. Street lights were the clock. When they came on, you knew it was time to head home, no matter how good the game was. Bikes screeched to a halt, kids vanished like ghosts, and moms leaned out the door with one word, "Now." We didn't argue, we just knew. TV didn't go all night. When the last show ended, a flag waved on screen while the national anthem played. Then, static. That meant bedtime, or time to read, or stare at the test pattern like it held secrets. It didn't, but it still felt oddly important. You could actually buy candy with pennies. You'd walk into the corner store with a handful of coins and come out with a tiny brown paper bag full of wax bottles, candy buttons, and maybe a jawbreaker that lasted 3 recesses. Sugar was freedom, and no one asked about ingredients. The encyclopedias came in the mail. You didn't Google things. You waited 6 to 8 weeks for Volume G. Encyclopedia salesmen would knock on your door with promises of smarter kids and polished sets of gold-lettered knowledge. And when they finally arrived, they lived on the living room shelf, like royalty. Even if you only ever opened D to look up dinosaurs. Soda didn't fizz the same unless it came in a glass. And those bottles had to be opened with a mounted opener. the one stuck to your garage wall. You'd line up a row of caps on the workbench like trophies. No twist-offs. You had to work for the good stuff. Back then, banks didn't just want your money as they bribed you with kitchen appliances. You'd open a savings account and walk out with a toaster, or a set of glasses, or a blender. It was weird and wonderful. Because honestly, the toasters were better than the interest. The whole house stopped when Bonanza came on, or Gunsmoke, or Andy Griffith. Westerns were everywhere, so were laugh tracks. Families watched together, not in silence, but in little bursts of commentary. He's gonna get it. That guy's no good. Turn it up. It was the sound of the living room breathing. The smell of fresh mimeograph paper hit like a wave. It was warm, inky, and came from the office with purple writing. Teachers handed them out, and half the class lifted them to their noses like they were holding magic. Honestly, no one knew why they smelled so good. Lunch from home meant a paper bag and a sandwich that got slightly flattened by books, bologna and mustard, chips in a waxed paper wrap, an apple, and maybe a cookie, if someone remembered. You'd trade snacks under the desk like it was a stock exchange. You knew the slideshow was coming when the lights dimmed and the projector clicked on. The first clunk of the tray was unmistakable. Family vacations, blurry birthday parties, aunts you didn't know. Someone always narrated too loud, and no one ever made it through without someone falling asleep. Elevators weren't automatic. They had people inside. They wore uniforms. Some had gloves. They'd open the gate, turn a little crank, and call out floors like they were conducting an orchestra. 4th floor, home goods, linens, toys. It was classy, and somehow felt like you were going somewhere important. Every trunk had one, a scratchy wool blanket that never actually got used. It was always there, just in case, for a roadside picnic or an emergency snowstorm. You never picked it on purpose. It was like a last resort towel at Grandma's. But it was loyal. Church clothes itched. The shoes were stiff. The collar never laid flat. But Sunday morning meant fidgeting on hard pews, counting ceiling tiles, and trying not to giggle during prayers. Sometimes the sermon lasted forever. Sometimes you got a peppermint from Grandma. Either way, you earned brunch. Popcorn didn't come from a bag. You poured kernels into a metal pot, added oil, and shook like your life depended on it. It was an arm workout. The smell filled the house before the first pop, and when it overflowed the bowl, you knew you'd done it right. TV dinners weren't fancy, but they felt like a treat. You peeled back the foil and waited forever as the kitchen filled with that unmistakable smell of overcooked peas, Salisbury steak, mashed potatoes, and a brownie that never cooked right. It was a little metal tray of modernity. Tinsel wasn't plastic yet. It was thin strips of shimmering metal. And you didn't toss it. You placed it, one strand at a time. Christmas lights glowed behind it, making the whole tree sparkle like something from a postcard. It stuck to everything, and no one ever minded. Radio buttons clicked like little safes. You'd push one in and the rest popped out, like jealous siblings. You could set your favorite station and find it with a single press. The sound crackled, the music played, and no one ever called it analog. It just worked. Behind the TV, little tubes glowed faint orange. They hummed softly, like the machine was breathing. If the picture flickered, you gave it a smack. If it died, someone went to the hardware store with a bulb and a paper bag. Fixing things wasn't optional. It was assumed. The whole country froze in front of the television when Kennedy's funeral aired. Even kids understood it was something heavy. Black and white images, that slow drumbeat, the riderless horse. It was one of the first times America truly mourned together in silence across millions of living rooms. Hair curlers weren't reserved for salons. You'd wind them tight before bed, hoping you didn't crush your skull in your sleep. Some were foam, some plastic, some had pins. And in the morning, you'd unravel them like a present, praying the curls lasted until lunchtime. School milk came in little cartons that fought back. You'd try to open them neatly, but they always tore, or splashed, or refused to open at all. They came in crates, smelled slightly metallic, and no matter how cold they started, they were warm by snack time. Grandma's sewing machine didn't need electricity, just feet. You'd watch her work the pedal like a drummer, feeding fabric through with steady hands. It clicked, whirred, and made straight lines better than anything digital ever did. And somehow it always smelled like dust and lemon polish. Coke came in heavy glass bottles, ice cold from a chest cooler, and in some diners you'd see cigarette machines glowing in the corner, metal levers, tiny windows, and that satisfying clunk when a pack dropped. Nobody asked your age. It was a different world. Not better, just different. Color TV didn't sneak in. It arrived with fanfare. When someone in the neighborhood got one, everyone visited. You'd stand there, arms crossed, nodding like you understood hue and contrast. Even cartoons looked dramatic. It was like watching the future on a fuzzy little screen. Bank drive-thrus weren't just convenient. They were cool. You'd pull up, press the speaker, and send your deposit flying through a clear tube with a satisfying whoosh. The little capsule came back with a receipt, a lollipop, and the undeniable feeling that machines were finally on your side. Sunday comics used to be an event. You'd flatten out the paper on the living room floor and stretch across 2 full pages of color. Peanuts, Dick Tracy, Little Orphan Annie. Dad read the news, but for kids, the comics were the real headline. Back then, tipping your hat was a small gesture with big meaning. Men did it when greeting a neighbor or stepping aside for a lady on the sidewalk. Women wore white gloves downtown like it was nothing. Dressing nice was just part of going out. Even to Woolworths. The sidewalk used to be a playground. Kids would crouch in circles playing marbles, toss jacks across the pavement, or try to master pickup sticks without moving the whole pile. No batteries, no screens, just the sound of kids arguing over rules made up 5 minutes earlier. Some kids swore you could hear secret messages if you played your records backward, so there we were, spinning vinyl the wrong way, listening for whispers between guitar solos. Maybe it was just static, but at the time, it felt like uncovering buried treasure. Empty lots turned into baseball diamonds every summer. No coaches, no umpires, just neighborhood kids and a pile of hats for bases. Somebody always brought a cracked bat and a ball wrapped in tape, and you didn't stop until someone's mom yelled it was dinner time. At some department stores, you'd stick your feet into an actual X-ray machine to check your shoe fit. You could see the bones of your toes wiggling inside. It felt futuristic and weirdly fun, even if nobody really knew how safe it was. School buses didn't have seatbelts, and nobody thought twice. You bounced along on green vinyl seats, windows half down, backpacks rattling on the floor. Field trips weren't about safety checklists. They were about paper sack lunches and hoping you didn't sit next to the weird kid. School assemblies were a thing. Everyone marched into the auditorium to wave tiny flags and sing patriotic songs. Sometimes there was a guest speaker or a slide projector. Mostly, it was a chance to fidget and whisper until the principal gave you that look. Gas stations used to hand out freebies, toy dinosaurs, state maps, glass tumblers. Kids collected the giveaways, and adults appreciated a full tank that came with a smile and maybe a prize. It wasn't just about fuel. It was a little moment of fun. Fountain pens were messy business. You'd come home from school with ink-stained fingers and blue smudges on your shirt. But for some reason, it felt grown up. Like signing your name in cursive really meant something, even if half the time it bled through the paper. Cursive wasn't just handwriting, it was a rite of passage. You practiced on giant lined paper with a pencil until your loops looked decent. Teachers circled the ugly ones in red ink. But once you nailed it, you felt fancy. Like your words had a signature. Roll-on deodorant wasn't sleek or invisible. It was a little glass bottle with a cold metal ball that clinked every time you used it. The scent? Sharp and medicinal. But it worked, and it didn't stain your clothes unless you overdid it. Recess was for swapping things. Comic books, baseball cards, the good marbles. You'd make your best offer, swear you had another issue at home, and shake on it. No phones, no apps, just a backpack full of treasures and a playground economy that ran on trust. Fizzies were little tablets you dropped in water to make soda. Cherry, grape, root beer. They fizzed like magic and tasted like sugar and childhood. You could pretend to be a scientist or just enjoy the fact your drink looked like a lava lamp. Tube socks went all the way up, red or blue stripes near the top, scrunched or folded. You wore them with shorts, sneakers, and absolutely no shame. Every kid looked like they were ready for gym class, even when they weren't. Chemistry sets back then came with stuff that would never pass safety rules today. Real chemicals, glass beakers, tiny burners. You could make a stink bomb or a foam volcano and not get expelled. Just don't spill anything on the shag carpet. Transistor radios were pocket-sized miracles. You'd press them to your ear, squint at the tiny dial, and scroll through crackling AM stations. Beatles, Motown, baseball games. It felt like holding a whole world of sound in your hand. Even if it ran out of batteries way too fast. Cereal boxes used to come with mail-in coupons for toys. You'd cut out the corner, tape some coins to a card, and wait weeks for the prize to arrive. Half the time it was junk. But getting something in the mail? That was the real treat. Tupperware parties weren't really about the Tupperware. It was pastel bowls, that burp seal, and a reason for moms to dress up and gossip. You'd hear laughter in the kitchen and know there'd be leftovers stored in the same bowl for the next 10 years, with the lid somehow always missing. Tang was orange, a little sour, and absolutely iconic. Not because it was great, but because the astronauts drank it. That one NASA commercial sealed it. Suddenly, every kid wanted to sip what the guys in space were having, even if Mom mixed it too strong. Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In came on like a confetti cannon. Bright lights, fast jokes, costumes, and punchlines that made grown-ups laugh while kids just blinked. You didn't get half of it, but you watched anyway, because it felt like grown-up TV, but weird enough to still be fun. Rotary phones weren't built for speed. If your friend's number had too many nines, forget it. You'd be there all afternoon, and if your finger slipped halfway through, start over. But the sound it made, that clicky return spin, somehow felt more satisfying than any smartphone beep. Bench seats were just that, benches. No seatbelts, no cup holders, just a wide slide of vinyl. You'd go whipping around corners and wind up piled against your siblings. The only restraint was Mom's arm flying out in front of you at every stop sign. Plastic couch covers were a summer curse, meant to protect the furniture. They trapped every ounce of heat. You'd sit down in shorts and immediately regret it. Legs stuck, backs sweaty, but you weren't allowed to take them off. Not until company left. And even then, maybe not. The yellow pages weighed a ton, thick as a dictionary and wedged under the phone, or used to prop up a kid at dinner. Need a plumber? Flip to P. Lost the dog. Check the classifieds. It was a phone book, a booster seat, and a doorstop in one. Film came in little black canisters you had to load by hand. Pop the back of the camera, stretch the leader, wind it just right. And once it was in, every click of the shutter felt like a tiny commitment. No previews, no redos, just hope and a trip to the developer. Slide projectors weren't quiet. Every family slideshow came with a click-whir chunk of that round carousel spinning. Pictures of Grandma by the lake, blurry vacations, or someone's birthday. Half the slides upside down. You sat in the dark with a paper plate of cake, pretending it wasn't boring. Canned spaghetti was a weeknight lifesaver. You didn't question it. Warmed up in a saucepan, poured into a chipped bowl. It was orange, mushy, and Italian. At least that's what the label said. You didn't know better. It was dinner. It was cheap. And somehow it still hit the spot. Drive-in theaters were magic on asphalt. You'd pull in, hang the metal speaker on your window, and hope it worked. Families in station wagons, couples in convertibles, all staring at a glowing screen under the stars. If you spilled popcorn, no one cared. The car was already a mess anyway. Diaper boxes had instructions right on the side. Boil and bleach, no disposables. Just stacks of white cloth folded into perfect squares and safety pinned into place. The pail in the bathroom wasn't for show. And laundry day smelled like detergent, rubber pants, and stubborn love. Metal toy trucks were practically weapons. Solid, sharp-edged, and always missing a wheel. They survived sandboxes, staircases, and being buried in the backyard. If you got one for Christmas, it was built to last. And if your little brother threw it, it left a dent in the wall and the floor. Everyone remembered where they were when JFK was shot. School, work, home, it didn't matter. Radios went quiet. TVs flickered to life. Grown-ups cried. Even kids knew something had cracked open in the world. And after that day, things just didn't feel the same. Green stamps were everywhere. You peeled them off at the grocery store, stuck them into little booklets, and saved up for blenders, fans, or maybe a new toaster. The reward catalog was a dreamland. And when you finally had enough books to trade in, it felt like winning the lottery. Help Wanted ads came in 2 flavors: Help Wanted male and Help Wanted female. No one questioned it. That's just how it was. Secretary here, mechanic there. The world felt split down the middle, and if you wanted to cross that line, good luck. Soda bottles were money in disguise. You'd bring them back to the store, clinking in a cardboard box, and get nickels in return. Then turn around and spend it on candy. You could spot a returnable bottle from across the street. It had a certain shimmer of opportunity. Movie theaters used to start with a cartoon: Bugs Bunny, Popeye, or Tom and Jerry. A little joy before the lights dimmed. You laughed, you slurped your drink, and then the real feature started. It was a full night out. Popcorn, candy, and 2 hours of magic. Dad's aftershave was Brute. That green bottle lived on the bathroom shelf like it paid rent. One splash, and the whole hallway smelled like cedar, menthol, and masculinity. Every dad had a brand. Every kid winced when they tried it. But somehow, that sharp, spicy scent still smells like grown up to anyone who lived through the 60s. Sunday night was shoe polishing time. You'd lay out newspaper, pull off your dusty loafers, and open that tin of polish. The smell filled the room. A brush here, a shine cloth there. You did it because Mom said so, and because clean shoes meant you were ready for the week. You could still smoke on airplanes. Flight attendants passed out free cigarettes, and ashtrays were built into every armrest. Nobody opened a window, but everyone exhaled like it was fine. Somehow, you landed smelling like a fireplace. And no one complained. The Sears catalog was a brick of dreams. Toys, clothes, furniture, all in one book thicker than your school textbooks. You'd dog-ear pages, circle things in pen, and pretend that Santa read it too. And when the Christmas catalog arrived, that was better than any parade on TV. Ordering from a catalog was a lesson in patience. You circled the thing in pen, mailed in your form, and waited. Weeks passed, sometimes months, and then one day a brown box showed up with your name on it. That wait, it made the item feel like gold. New plastic lunch boxes had a smell all their own, sweet, sharp, a little chemical. You'd peel back the lid to reveal a bologna sandwich in wax paper and maybe a Twinkie if you were lucky. That first whiff of vinyl meant school was really back. The kitchen table wasn't granite or glass. It was Formica, usually yellow or mint green with chrome legs that wobbled just enough to spill your milk. You ate there, did homework there, even fixed the occasional toaster there. It was scratched, stained, and somehow perfect. If that stirred up some good memories, you might enjoy jumping ahead a bit into the bold, bright, and unforgettable days of the 1980s. Click the video on your screen and take the time machine to a decade full of big hair, big music, and even bigger fun. It's waiting for you.